Speaking of scientists, we have two rock star guests who are joining me today. We have members of the Landsat Communications and Public Engagement team at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. Ross Walter, who is a returning guest, and we also have Laura Rocchio. They have both been involved with the Spectral Band Comparison tool, which is a very fascinating resource for visualizing Landsat data. Ross and Laura, I had a couple of questions that I just wanted to ask you in relation to your work with the Spectral Band Comparison tool. I think our audience is going to be very fascinated by our conversation today. My very first question I wanted to ask you was to please tell the audience about yourself and describe your projects you have worked on with the Landsat mission at SSAI. Ross, I'm going to turn it over to you first. Would you mind kicking us off?
Sure. Yeah. So I've worked with the Landsat outreach team for a little over 3 years. My current title is creative technologist, which is a very broad term, but I do a lot of different things with the team. So some of the projects I've worked on recently are called Your Name in Landsat, which we talked about before. A lot of web interactives, also including the one we're talking about today, which is the Spectral Band Comparison tool. And in the past, I've worked on a project called the Stella Data Viewer that's very similar, interactive web content. And then I also do a lot of 3D animation, so like flyovers or visualizations of the satellite itself. And then I also work with Ali, another person on our team, doing social media, and I create a lot of short form content, usually videos, that normally called reels, I guess. So I do a lot of that. And then most recently, I've been working on a lot of augmented reality experiences and all tailored towards outreach for Landsat.
That is fantastic, Ross. And I'm so glad that you brought up the Your Name in Landsat podcast episode. And for those of you audience and viewers who are currently listening in and are curious about our previous podcast episode that we did entitled Your Name in Landsat, please definitely check that out if you haven't already done so. And Ross, again, I just want to say welcome back to you. Thanks for coming back.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. With that, Laura, I'm going to transition on to you. Can you tell the audience about yourself and describe some of the projects you have worked on with the Landsat mission at SSAI?
Sure, yeah. I've been with the Landsat outreach team with SSAI for quite a long time. I started in 2000, just after finishing a geography master's, where I had been looking at subcanopy topography using LiDAR. And I accepted a job with Landsat once that was finished up. And at the time, back in 2000, the job was half outreach and helping with some communication tools, and half research. I was actually helping look at some afforestation in northeastern China at the time. It was a fun hybrid, but I realized over that time that I really liked the communication aspects of it, being able to kind of step back and tell the stories of the research that was going on and why was happening in the larger picture. And so I decided to go back and get another master's degree in something called publication design, which was a mix of both graphic design and writing, and then put that together with geography to then move more into just the communication and outreach side with the Landsat team. And it's been fun. So some of the projects that I would highlight in the past 2 decades, the Landsat Science website, that's been kind of a long-term project of me. We did a really huge redesign back in 2006, and a lot of the functionality and the overall content is from that time period. And then since that, with the team, it's grown and we've made it better and better. But having that content and that design functionality was one of my big projects I've worked on over the years. And then I was fortunate enough to be part of the Landsat's Enduring Legacy book project. So it's a big kind of 600-page tome, which is hard to see, but that's all about Landsat's history. So I got to do a lot of research and writing about Landsat and how it came to be. And those pretty fascinating. And the whole book is available online. You can just download it from the publisher ASPRS. We could put that in the show notes. And then I've had for a long time a Landsat newsletter that used to just kind of be by hand, and that would chronicle the news on the site. But starting last year, we started putting it out more formally in Constant Contact. And now with the whole team's help, it's really fun, and it's a great resource for Landsat happening. So if anyone wants to sign up for our Landsat newsletter, we can give that information out as well. And then the spectral band comparison tool that we'll be talking about today, that was a more recent thing that we worked on, and having Ross on the team has just been fantastic, because some of these things that were just kind of a bit of a pipe dream, he's been able to help us turn them into reality. So that's been just fantastic.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible, Laura. And I really appreciate you sharing about your in-depth background and your schooling. That is absolutely incredible. I'm pursuing a master's degree myself, and I should be graduating with that in 2026. So that's definitely very exciting in terms of your educational journey. And wow, the projects that you have done, it's just very fascinating and absolutely incredible with the book. As well. And since you said it was 600 pages, I'm sure that took a long time to write. Is that correct? How long did it take you to write and finish?
It was I was not the sole author, so I was one of 6. And it took us, the whole project itself was well over a decade, but no one was writing full time. It was kind of here and there. And it started off basically as a collection of interviews and documents. And then later on in the process, we got Rose's proposal to actually put it together as a book. So there's lots of information, and then there's just pages and pages of references. So it's a really nice way to figure out, if you're looking for a certain detail, to figure out where to go get it.
That's awesome. Well, I just wanted to congratulate you on publishing that book. So that's a tremendous accomplishment, and we will definitely provide a link in the YouTube description of this video for our audience to check out. So Ross and Laura, I really appreciate you highlighting about the projects that you have worked on with the Landsat mission at SSAI, as well as sharing more about yourselves. It's incredibly fascinating what you both are doing. And now I wanted to transition into the Spectral Band Comparison tool. And Ross, this question is going to be directed to you. And my question is, the Spectral Band Comparison tool, it's a very fascinating resource in terms of visualizing Landsat data. As a creative technologist, how do you approach creating tools that balance scientific functionality with an intuitive and visually appealing user experience? And then on top of that, could you also share any unique challenges or breakthroughs you encountered while designing this tool?
Sure, yeah. So I guess to give a very 100-foot view of the project, it's essentially a way to graph different satellites or sensors from Earth orbiting satellites and compare them against one another. So oftentimes many of these sensors collect wavelengths of light in bands, and it's good to know, which satellites cover certain areas of the wavelengths of light and which don't, how much resolution each one of them have. And oftentimes in the past, we've had issues kind of making some of these graphical explanations of how these work, because they can tend to get very detailed. You end up working with like tens of nanometers, and in the past we've had issues where there have been slight errors for some graphics, and it kind of came across that this would be a really useful tool just for anyone to use that wanted to make quick comparisons between different satellites. And so a lot of this work is actually based on a graphic that Laura made that's been shared a lot, comparing Landsat bands to one another. So kind of my goal was to stay true to that original graphic and kind of make something that felt like that and was easy to understand, but also visually compelling to look at. And so I would say some of more of the issues I guess I ran into with making it was one, like the dense amount of information that comes from all these satellites, just compiling all of the numbers and different details about each one But I ended up using an API called Chart.js, which is a very simple graphing API. And usually when you would use this, it's just for putting points on a graph. So I had to go through some hoops to get blocks or annotations to essentially appear on this graph. So that was kind of like the first big hurdle was, can I make a block that stretches 20 nanometers on the screen, which sounds very simple, but in practice it was not as simple as I thought it would be. But then later down the road, I think I really wanted this to be interactive and allow the user to customize the graphic as much as they wanted. And so that's kind of where things got pretty complicated. There's a lot of customization that the user can do on the side. So anytime that they change the color of a band or change the graph that they're looking at, it will iterate through all of the settings and update that with all of its specifications like padding and styling and things. So overall, it was, I think, really fun to work through and presented some interesting challenges that I hadn't come across before.
Wow, that's absolutely fascinating, Ross. And I appreciate you highlighting some of the challenges that you went through in regards to the spectral band comparison tool. I think, as we can all agree, it's not one straight path from path A to path B. There's so many different, paths or zigzags, as we say, in order to get to your goal. And that's definitely a message we like to share with our audience. And Ross, I know that you mentioned as well about Chart.js. I've actually never heard of that, like in school. Like, can school districts, let's say, access it? Do you have to pay for this, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's actually an open source API, so anyone can use it if they want to. It's really just a JavaScript plugin, and essentially what it does is just graph values for you. So you can give it a CSV file or plug in your own numbers that you want to, and then it offers a lot of different styling. So they have like bar charts and simple point line graphs as well. So it's really helpful for if you're creating, for example, in our interactive, this really nice thing to put in there was this giant curve that had all of these data points in the back. And Laura, you can clarify for me because I'm forgetting the specifics of what that data was.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so that was a really easy thing and nice to put into the program because it could just graph all those points really easily and make them visually appealing, which can be tough to tackle by yourself if you're just creating a graphing function by yourself. So that was super helpful to use.
Wow, that's incredibly fascinating. And I will definitely be doing some research in terms of that tool. So, and for those of you audience and viewers who are listening as well, we'll definitely be providing multiple links. So we encourage all of you to check out as well. So Ross, I really do appreciate you highlighting about your experiences with the spectral band comparison tool and about some of the triumphs that you've had, and then also some of the struggles that you had. In relation to that, Laura, I wanted to transition on to you and ask you this question. As part of the Landsat outreach team, you play a crucial role in connecting tools like the spectral band comparison tool to many diverse audiences. My question that I have for you is how do you tailor your outreach strategies to engage both scientific communities and the general public? And what impact do you hope this tool will have on their understanding of Landsat data?
For this tool, having spectral comparisons overlaid over atmospheric transmission, it's something that has been done for a long time, like since we started doing space-based remote sensing. They knew that we had to look at certain places because our atmosphere does a good job of protecting us from things like ozone. So there's things that that don't transmit through the atmosphere. So it's always been kind of this where do we look? What are the atmospheric windows we want to look at? So when Landsat 8, back when it was called LDCM, and it did not at that time yet have a planned thermal band, was coming to be, we wanted to compare its bands to an earlier satellite. And so, usually this was done very often. It was simple to put it in tables, but we wanted to be able to have a visual way to quickly do it. So we kind of looked to the past for some of these ideas, and then we came up with ours, and then we kind of tweaked it so it was visually like very appealing. And then we ended up being just kind of blown away that it showed up. It was on our website, the Landsat Science website, of course. We had it on some of our original materials, but then it just started showing up all the time in papers and at conferences, and everyone was, using it. So we realized, okay, this one, it looks attractive and it's helpful for people. And then we started getting lots of requests like, oh, could you add this or could you do that? And at the time, before Ross was on the team, it was a very laborious process. We would plot things out in Excel, and then we didn't have the design capability. I wanted to have it look the way I wanted it to look. So then I would port it to InDesign. And it's a two-step process. There's, a lot of ins and outs, and it took a while when people asked if you could add this or do that. Our partners at USGS asked for the InDesign source files, and so they were trying to do the same process. And the whole time we thought this would be a lot easier if you could just click on and off. I want these satellites, and it shows up and it's accurate. And that's where Ross came in and was able to do that. But to answer your question more generally, just being at that cross space where you're trying to convey ideas in innovative, fun ways where it can you can basically give someone context. And so visuals are always super helpful because there's always like a visual context are there. And I do that in writing too, trying to say, make connections. What might a reader know that is a jumping off point to connect them to that. So, I've done that with both design and writing for Landsat over the last 2 decades. And I hope that it's helped convey messages and information about how important Landsat is to us as a nation and as a world.
That's great, Laura, and I really appreciate you diving more deeper into that. And what really stuck out to me was you mentioned about the visual aspect, because each and every single one of us, we learn in different ways and at different rates. And I definitely learn best through visual aids based on my experiences, and just providing that visual component, it really helps to connect the pieces of the puzzle together, which is awesome, because that allows, for example, those in the younger generations to be able to see, what is the purpose behind this? So, and that's definitely the message that we want to get across. And Ross and Laura, based on your work that you're currently doing with this tool, you are definitely getting that message across. This is all incredibly positive, and I'm glad to hear there was a lot of interest with it. And transitioning to my next question, Laura, this question is also going to be directed at you as well. Looking ahead into the future, how do you envision tools like the Spectral Band Comparison tool evolving to further enhance both scientific research and also public engagement?
Well, I think the beauty of it is that it's expandable. So Ross has already gotten some requests from a project scientist to add other sensors, so you can quickly and visually compare where the spectral bands line up or don't line up and what's different about them. So I see that going forward, that happening more often, having more sensors added to it. And my hope is that we will continue now to see this graphic in papers and books and websites like the old one, but this one, people will be able to create and tailor it exactly as they need it to be. They can compare what they want and take away the ones they don't. And so I think it will have a long lasting impact that way. And I also wanted to shout out to our partners at USGS, because for folks who are looking to figure out like what bands to use, like they want to compare not just the spectral bands of different sensors, but looking at like Landsat spectral bands and saying, I want to look at snowfields or this or that. They have this really beautiful tool where you can actually put a bunch of spectra from different things that they have, either lab measurements or ground measurements for, and compare it with bands. So that's another really great tool that we can share in the show notes.
That's awesome. And, like I said, Laura and Ross, I'm so glad to hear that there's so much interest with this. And this tool is definitely expanding, like you said, Laura, and we're all very excited to see what continued advancements come with that, including more sensors as well. So I really appreciate you thinking ahead a little bit and explaining more about how it's going to further enhance both scientific research and public engagement. And to transition into my final question, Ross, I'm going to transition over to you. As professionals combining design and outreach, just as a side note, what advice would you give to those who are aiming to bridge the gap between complex data and meaningful user experiences?
Sure. Well, I think you mentioned it earlier that you're a very visual learner, which I also can very much agree with that too. And I think one thing I've been so lucky to work for Landsat for is that our satellite makes such beautiful imagery. So oftentimes our images can speak for themselves, which is really great. And I think a really nice way to tie in a lot of the science is to first kind of grab your audience by giving them something striking or visually appealing, and then have them kind of be curious about it and give them intrigue so that they want to learn more. And so that's something we wanted to drive with this too. It's something that it's very simple. When you look at it, you can kind of understand what's going on. But if you want to learn more about it, we have additional information, particularly on the interactive itself. And I think another point of that is also that the interactive is something that users can control, and giving that customization was something that I really wanted to add because it makes you much more involved and have to dive into the specifics of what you're looking at. And so I think that really helps a lot of just getting that hands-on work where you can really be in control of the graphic you're outputting and give you more details and information about what you're creating. So I think that can help a lot, particularly with people like me who are also very visual learners.
That's fantastic, Ross. And I was going to say, I like the word that you stated in regards to making the audience be curious. That's definitely a great point, because then if they're really curious about something, then they're really going to want to know further details about it, and they're going to want to dive in to this tool further. So I thought that was very well put. So Ross and Laura, with that, I just wanted to thank you both again so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules to talk with me today. You both are truly rock stars in terms of the work that you are doing at SSAI, and everybody around the world is going to be very fascinated by the continued great work and advancements with the Spectral Band Comparison tool. And again, for those of you audience viewers who are currently listening, again as well, we will be providing multiple links for you all to check out in the YouTube description of this video. So please definitely click below and engage with us. We want to hear from you. And our scientists like Ross and Laura are available to answer any questions that you all might have. In addition to that, I just wanted to mention that SSAI is going to be exhibiting at the American Geophysical Union Conference in Washington, D.C. on Monday, December 9th through Thursday, December 12th. And SSAI is one of several contracting organizations that helps to support many different global organizations like NASA. So if you are definitely in the Washington, D.C. area, please definitely come on over and check SSAI out at our booth, and also explore the NASA booth that is there, and then also the Maryland booth as well. So there's going to be a cool demonstration that will be done by one of our SSAI employees at the event. So we really hope that you can join us. And again, if you have any questions, please let us know. So again, Ross and Laura, thank you both so much again for the time that you gave today. And please keep us posted about the continued advancements that come with this tool. We can't wait to highlight it.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Will do. And we definitely encourage people to look at the spectral band comparison and to check out Landsat Next and its 26 bands. It's really fun to see how many more bands it has the next generation. So thanks again.